A top medical school gets exposed for prioritizing diversity and identity over merit and competence, Congress takes a big step to stop digital tyranny, and a TikToker explains which kinds of white people are acceptable. All this and so much more is coming up on today's episode of Brad vs. Everyone, my daily series where I take on all the craziest ideas across the internet and in our politics from a center-right, independent perspective. If you're new here, please do consider subscribing, and if you're a returning viewer, you know what I'm going to say. Don't forget to hit that like button, and do consider commenting with your thoughts as we go along, because I do read the comments, and I pick a few to respond to in every episode. Now, without further ado, let's get into our main topic for today, which shows just how far woke extremism has officially gone. So most Americans, off the internet at least, would still agree that we don't want diversity hires responsible for matters of life and death. But new investigative reporting shows that extreme diversity, equity, and inclusion ideology has corrupted major medical schools at the expense of merit and leading to disastrous results. These revelations come from the Washington Free Beacon's Aaron Sibarium, who just published a really remarkable expose on the UCLA Medical School. It alleges that the university has systematically violated laws prohibiting race-based admission and held applicants of different races to wildly different standards, all in an effort intended to boost diversity, yet instead producing incompetent and unqualified doctors. Based on conversations with many people inside the admissions office and the medical school, Sibarium recounts how things have gone drastically wrong ever since the appointment of a DEI-obsessed dean of admissions, Jennifer Lucero, in June 2020. Faculty members with first-hand knowledge of the admissions process say it has prioritized diversity over merit, resulting in progressively less qualified classes that are now struggling to succeed, he reports. One former member of the admissions team told the Free Beacon that this approach has turned the institution into a quote, failed medical school, concluding, "We want racial diversity so badly, we're willing to cut corners to get it." Sibarium reports on a couple really disturbing anecdotes where this DEI-obsessed admissions officer freaked out on her colleagues and tried to force through candidates that were not qualified. In November 2021, they were considering a black applicant with grades and test scores far below the UCLA average. So some members of the committee felt that this particular candidate, based on the available evidence, was not the best fit for the top-tier medical school. Their reservations were not well received. When an admissions officer voiced concern about the candidate, the two people said the dean of admissions, Jennifer Lucero, exploded in anger. "Did you not know African American women are dying at a higher rate than everybody else?" Lucero asked the admissions officer. "The candidate's scores shouldn't matter," she continued, "because we need people like this in the medical school." There was another alarming incident like this with a Native American applicant. Lucero has lashed out at officials who question the qualifications of minority candidates, 5 sources said, suggesting naysayers are privileged, implying that they are racist and subjecting them to diversity training sessions. After a Native American applicant was rejected in 2021, for example, Lucero chewed out the committee and made members sit through a 2-hour lecture on Native history delivered by her own sister. And apparently, these aren't just two crazy anecdotes, but they're representative of a broader trend. Sibarium further reports that according to admissions committee insiders, the bar for underrepresented minorities is as low as you could possibly imagine, while whites and Asians need near-perfect scores to even be considered. Guys, we're no longer talking about like tokenistic diversity in a TV show or something. We're talking about putting unqualified people in positions where they'll be responsible for people's lives. This is insane, and as this expose reveals, the results of this approach have been disastrous for the university. Within 3 years of Lucero's hiring in 2020, UCLA dropped from 6th to 18th place in US News and World Report's rankings for medical research, he reports, and in some of the cohorts she admitted, more than 50% of students failed standardized tests on emergency medicine, family medicine, internal medicine, and pediatrics. Those tests, known as shelf exams, which are typically taken at the end of each clinical rotation, measure basic medical knowledge and play a pivotal role in residency applications. Though only 5% of students fail each test nationally, the rates are much higher at UCLA, having increased tenfold in some subjects since 2020. Wow, guys. Just wow. I will note that one other factor that's probably playing at least some role in the declining test scores and declining standards of the medical students is probably the COVID-19 pandemic. Because many of these students had their educations significantly disrupted by the pandemic and by the stupid and overly restrictive policies enacted during it. And so we are seeing in all areas, not just medicine, significant declines in scores and aptitude for those people who had their educations disrupted. So that's probably part of what's going on here. But it's still morally evil and almost certainly illegal to be doing this, and it's definitely making the performance problems worse. You don't have to take my word for it. The allegations made were so significant that the law professor David Bernstein concluded, if half the allegations in this article are true, UCLA Medical School should cease to exist and should be replaced by a new institution that obeys the law and cares about the competence of the students it graduates. He further noted that the things UCLA is accused of doing are explicitly illegal under state law. I still am in a little bit of shock that this story is real. It feels like this should be a Babylon Bee headline, making fun of wokeness, not like an actual thing that happened. And this is just one medical school, but it's an extremely prestigious and important one. And if it's happening there, it could well be happening at many more. One other point I want to make is how ridiculous and insulting and degrading this is to all the extremely qualified and extremely competent minority doctors and medical students. It's really unfair to them because as these kinds of practices continue to come to light, people will keep looking at them, even though they're not the ones who have been let in who shouldn't have been, right? They're actually qualified. They're actually good at their jobs. People will look at them and wonder if they're qualified or if they're just a diversity pick. That's really unfair, but it's also a completely predictable and inevitable result of this kind of reverse racial preferences and hierarchy. I mean, look, I think with this DEI obsession and the backlash it's getting, America is approaching a crossroads. Are we going to continue to strive towards meritocracy, however imperfectly? Or are we instead going to institute some sort of perverse, reverse racial hierarchy? I think most Americans who haven't drank the woke Kool-Aid or had their brains broken by TikTok intuitively know the answer. Just ask yourself, would you trust a doctor who recently graduated from UCLA with your life? I know I wouldn't, not after this story. But that's just me. Let me know what you think in the comments below, especially if you're a doctor or a medical student, and if you've encountered any of this woke stuff in your experience. I do want to hear from you. And you can also reach out to me privately and send me any documents you have or tell me anything you've experienced. We'll leave it there for now, and now we're going to talk about some good news happening in Congress for once. The House just took a big step towards preventing digital dystopia. As Fox Business reports, the House of Representatives on Thursday voted along bipartisan lines to advance legislation blocking the Federal Reserve from creating its own central bank digital currency, or CBDC. A CBDC is a new technology that's basically a digital dollar. It's kind of like a cryptocurrency, but not really, and it would be centralized and controlled by the central bank. Here's one Republican member of Congress, French Hill, explaining why he supported the legislation to ban the CBDC from ever being instituted by the Fed.
Because we live in a world where government can abuse the tools that they have. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau could freezing bank accounts of people protesting COVID-19 in his country. We've read reports from the Select Committee on the Weaponization of the federal government about how FinCEN, a bureau of the Treasury Department, pressured banks to screen private transactions of their customers for words like MAGA or Trump on behalf of federal law enforcement. Is that really the country we want to live in? They even tracked people, according to that subcommittee, if you shopped at Bass Pro Shop. I shop at Bass Pro Shops all the time in my district. This kind of Big Brother-style surveillance of our financial lives by government is alarming to Americans because it represents the political targeting of citizens in this country.
I think the congressman makes some good points here. And in my view, there are three huge problems with a digital dollar. First is the unparalleled level of government surveillance it would enable, with the feds having the ability to track your every move and your every purchase. Second is the programmability of a CBDC or digital dollar. This is actually one of the things its advocates tout, that they could program your money so it could only be used in certain ways. Think limiting how much money you can use to spend on gasoline, for example, or forcing your money to expire so you have to hurry up and spend it. And third, it's just so ripe for abuse to have all that centralized authority and control in one government body. It's not at all a stretch to think that the government would debank dissidents or target people who are unfavored for different reasons. Just look at what Justin Trudeau recently did to Canadian truckers who protested his policies. For all these reasons, a digital dollar is a dystopian development with very little upside and a whole lot of potential downside. Kudos to the Republicans and the couple of Democrats that voted to block this from becoming a reality, and if the Senate and the president had any sense left, they'd get on board with blocking this madness from ever seeing the light of day. But don't hold your breath on that one. Alright, we'll leave it there for now on digital currency. Let me know what you think in the comments below about a CBDC or digital dollar. Do you support it, or are you on the same page as me that it is just a Pandora's box we do not want to open? And now it's time for Brad versus TikTok, my segment where I take on the craziest and cringiest ideas going viral on the Clock app.
Pronoun of the day is slug slugs.
If you're new here, do make sure you're subscribed, and please consider hitting that like button as we go along. Now let's get into it and check in with this TikToker who is going to explain to us which types of white people are good and acceptable versus all the bad ones. All, of course, in the name of racial justice and from the perspective of a progressive.
So, a lot of people think I hate white people. Spoiler, I don't. I just hate whiteness and white supremacy as concepts and as structures of oppression. But that's not what this video is about.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but I'm definitely getting the vibe that she does, in fact, hate white people.
This video is about the types of white people I do like, or the types of white people that I find to be safer and I'm more trusting of.
Just replace white with black or any other group, and it will become immediately obvious how bizarre and frankly evil this thinking is. Let's talk about the kinds of black people I actually like, or let's talk about the kinds of Hispanic people I actually can trust. What? Babe, your racism is showing.
First, we have the gays. And honestly, when they're not exploiting black culture and they're not overcompensating their identity, they're some of the best allies I've come across to date. And it's because normally there's some kind of leftist, communist, abolitionist queerness going on there.
Not with this gay, or frankly, most of the gays I've met. And personally, I don't typically trust or love to be around people who support communism, an authoritarian and deadly ideology that was responsible for roughly 100 million deaths in the 20th century. But that's just me.
Next, we have the ghettos, also known as white trash. And as said before, when they're not exploiting blackness, normally they have an interesting sociological perspective due to the fact of their racial and class identity. Also, sometimes they have a preference for black people, and because of this, they get used to our culture and community and find ways to properly advocate for.
You know, I've met my fair share of people who might be described as white trash in my day, and I'm not sure I've met many with an interesting sociological perspective, or even many who would know what the word sociological means. But go off, I guess?
Next, we have Mark, and we rockin' with Mark because Mark rockin' with us. These are the rando whites that are just always around POC, and they just know how to keep their mouth shut, not overstep, keep it respectful, because they're just happy to be there. You know, they're still fighting to get an invite to the cookout, so they're kind of just playing the field a little bit.
So basically, my translation of this is that she only likes white people who shut up and don't disagree with her and are just content to suck up and try to get invited to the cookout. I don't know, maybe I'm out of touch here, but it's just kind of crazy to me you'd call yourself a racial justice advocate in one sentence, and then in the very next seem to suggest that skin pigment should determine who speaks and who shuts up. The math isn't mathing, at least not for me. But what do I know? I mean, I'm definitely not one of the good whites. At least not in her book.
Next, we have gingers. No explanation. We also have Italians. I made a video on them recently. If anyone wants me to expand on this, let me know. And if you're wondering what category I would place my partner in,
oh, it's just so weird to me how race essentialist these woke people are. Like, being Italian or being ginger tells you literally nothing about a person, but you're attaching good whiteness to that. Anyway, the video actually cuts off here, but I wasn't exactly shocked or surprised to learn that this individual has a white boyfriend. That's an interesting pattern, shall we say, that is commonly observed with this type of commentator or influencer. The thing that does surprise me is why any white man would want to date someone like this, who so clearly openly hates and discriminates against white people. But maybe he has a humiliation kink or something. Love is love. Not my place to judge, I guess. Now, this video was clearly meant somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but the bizarre racial obsession in it is representative of this person's other content.
the biggest detriment of being a Black woman who's marginalized in other ways is that, one, people constantly undermine you. Like, they invalidate your intelligence, your skill set, everything all the time.
All right, I'm going to go out on a limb here and suggest that it might not be your skin color as the reason why people keep invalidating your intelligence. It might be because you keep saying stupid shit.
Two, along with them invalidating that, they will steal your ideas, co-opt your movements, and literally not care. Like, they'll tell you you're stupid while stealing your idea and claim it as their own. But along with that, the way society is set up, it's so that oppressed people don't have a way to escape. You know, the systems are set up so that the people who are the truth seekers, the people who are the call-outers, the people who want accountability are the ones who are enemies.
No, babe. Maybe people view you as an enemy because you revile and discriminate against them because of their immutable demographic traits they can't control, like their skin color, which is, you know, racist and evil. And it's wild to me that you think you're so marginalized and so oppressed. I'm sure your life has had its struggles. That's true for a lot of people. And you know what? I'm even sure you've experienced racism in different forms at different points in your life. But as an American in 2024, you are among the 99.9999th percentile of the most privileged human beings to ever exist. You have levels of opportunity afforded to you that people across the world alive today would still and do still envy. Yet you seem to just walk through the world constantly looking for ways to portray yourself as a victim and helpless. It's just sad.
I mean, look at it now. Like, when you see activists, advocates, abolitionists, they're always called haters. They're always told they're starting drama everywhere they go. They tell, it's not all about race. Stop being so sensitive. It's not that deep. That's the narrative that gets pushed. Like, we're seen as the problem makers. Like, racism isn't the issue. People who call it out are. You know what I mean?
No, I think the problem is that you call out a lot of racism that's imaginary and that you're kind of racist yourself, girl. That might be why people think you're a problem. It is, in fact, not that deep.
And it's just exhausting to experience. I don't know. I always want this page to be a safe space for people who resonate with that and who want to discuss that. So if you feel like you do, know that I'm here for you, especially if you're a Black woman. I got y'all back forever because we see each other in ways no one else does.
It's kind of wild to see somebody openly say they want their page to be a safe space, but really only especially for certain demographics of people, certain skin colors and pigments. I think we might not be on the same page about what a safe space means. Although, to be fair, I don't want my page or my channel to be a safe space for anyone, because that's boring and anti-intellectual. I want people to be challenged, and I want them to challenge me in return. Anyway, it's not just this one individual. This noxious, regressive approach to race is all over TikTok. I just really hope that people like this can wake up at some point and realize that they are reinforcing divisions. They are making things worse, not better. But that's just my take. Let me know what you think in the comments below of this interesting video. And now, before we wrap up today's episode and take a break for the weekend, I'll read a few of your comments from the last video. One person just comments, seatbelts, saying, retired airline pilot here. Yeah, guys, seatbelts. At any time in the airplane, even when this sign isn't on, and at any time in the car. The cost is so low and it could literally save your life. Another person says, FYI Brad, a highway as referred to in the study is just a public road, meaning this includes freeways, main roads, and smaller public roads. This will account for the vast majority of injuries from accidents, as accidents that happen off public roads, such as in parking lots or on private property, are much less likely to cause injury due to low speeds. Source, I work in auto insurance. Okay, that's good to know, and thank you for that extra information. So I wanted to correct that, because guys, you'll remember yesterday I showed you the graph of how like auto accidents, you're way more likely to die than in an air travel incident, but even that was only counting auto deaths on highways. So I was like, oh, that's probably even an underestimate, but apparently that probably does capture most of the deaths. So it doesn't change a whole lot, but useful context and clarification. Another person said, Brad talking about the economy is so, what does that emoji mean? I think it's like a thirsty emoji. I mean, look, I would love to talk about the economy, but people just like don't tune in for that. So I will try to keep doing it as much as I can. Maybe I need to like do shirtless economy videos or something. Like maybe that's the way I can still get views. Another person says, I will never be able to eat marshmallows again, and I love them. Also, why did his mother not inform him that it is completely unacceptable? You know, I had that same thought about the mom. She must be drunk on the woke Kool-Aid, or just be like, I don't know, a little delulu herself, because I would have been like, shut up to my kid and be like, time and place. Like, we can talk about this later at home, not around all these children. What are you doing? Another person says, hey, Brad, I just wanted to let you know that you criticizing other articles for titles that scare people from flying and then doing the same is a little hypocritical. I think he's mentioning my YouTube title there. I'm not saying this out of hate. I just know your dedication to pointing out hypocrisy, so I thought you would like to know how that comes off. So I do think that's a fair critique. But I do view it a little bit differently in that, like, those were headlines from the CBC and CNBC and like serious news outlets in news article headlines. Whereas this is an infotainment YouTube channel. So I think the standards don't need to be quite the same. The other thing is they were running whole headlines and stories tying this to climate change. And then, you know, somewhere in there they had a paragraph that said, it's still safe to fly according to statistics. Whereas my video had the clickbaity title about it, is it not safe to fly or whatever, but then much of the bulk was dedicated to explaining why it is still safe to fly. So I don't view it as really an apples to apples comparison, but I think you have something of a point. And I know I'm not perfect. I don't always live up to my own standards. It's hard though to balance trying to get clicks and engagement on YouTube without, you know, going too far into the clickbait stuff. But hopefully, you know, if my channel grows enough and I start getting enough views regardless, I won't have to do as much of the clickbait stuff. All right, everybody, we'll wrap it up for today's episode there. Thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure you're subscribed if you aren't yet. And don't forget to hit that like button and comment with your thoughts on your way out. And with that, have a great weekend. We'll talk again on Monday.